coming up on a week ago now. I definitely experienced some of the induction symptoms, but overall I think I'll be much better for it by the time I'm done with it in a few months, and hopefully I'll maintain these better habits months later when I'm going forward with my life. My goal is to lose weight. I noticed too that also on the keto diet, I don't experience the same blood sugar insulin spikes where I'm really tired after I eat or want to sleep at a certain time during the middle of the day. When you use fat as your body's fuel source, which is what happens on the during ketosis on the keto diet, your energy levels are much more consistent because it's constantly drawing from your reserves of fat. I would say in all of my experiences, I've tried many different fad diets over the years. In all my experiences, out of every single one, whether it be intermittent fasting, just fasting in general, keto, simple calorie, deficit maintenance, all of that, I find keto has been the most effective for me. I've gone from 200 pounds to 160 doing it. Now, the other diets I mentioned, they are effective. They certainly can work, but for me, I find behaviorally, in terms of maintaining it, the keto diet is best for me. So that's what's going on with my life right now. But that's not the topic of this video. The topic of this video is how to invest in AI and automation. Now, I created a pie with just about every single AI exposed company, and for the purposes of this video, AI means machine learning, automation, and artificial intelligence, all three. I know those are different sectors or different technologies, but we're just doing a shotgun approach to this one. And you can see that in the portfolio too. I've taken the same approach to this portfolio as I have with gene therapy, where instead of trying to pretend that I know which company is going to succeed in AI, automation, and machine learning, which I don't, I've decided, you know what, I'm going to make a pie of every single company I know that is exposed to AI. So if you believe in the general technology, I've created this portfolio where it's designed to just buy every single company related to AI, because at the end of the day, my estimation is that no one really knows which company is going to succeed and which company is going to fail and which company is going to be the one that changes the future, right? So in the 1800s, during the age of industrialization, there were a few new technologies that would fundamentally change the world, but at the time they were in their infancy. And people who betted right on these technologies ended up being incredibly powerful people in their day. So in the past, the titans of industry were people who invested in things like electricity, radio, locomotion, steam power, things like that, these new basic technologies which would change the world. We're talking Gilded Age, Industrial Revolution. Well, today that's a little bit different. Today I would say the technologies that are going to define this generation are gene therapies, AI and automation, and perhaps space. There are a few other ones too, but those are the three that come off the top of my head. There are a few key sectors these days that I think will change the next century. We're not there yet, but people who play those or get on the ground floor will do well. And so this portfolio is an attempt to get as much access as possible to AI and hope that in the process of AI fundamentally changing and probably destroying our way of life, you at least hope to profit from it in the meantime. Though I imagine in an AI world, something like stock investing would be, it won't be like it how we see now, that I'll tell you what, that's for sure. Alright, so with this portfolio, the first thing I want to get right out of the way is that if you had been in this portfolio for the past 5 years, you wouldn't really have made any money. But the point of this portfolio isn't so much to make you rich like the basic Becky portfolio. The point is that when you buy a portfolio like this or any company that you think is involved in AI, machine learning, automation, you're looking way into the future. We're talking 10 years plus. So in this case, I personally am not as concerned with the previous returns as I would be with other portfolios. Now, without further ado, I'm going to reveal the portfolio now. So the first company is Alibaba, which I have a link to right here, actually. They have something called the Alibaba Demo Academy. And you can see that it's a bunch of boilerplate text, but the point is that they're focusing on everything. AI algorithms, machine learning, and they're leveraging all their data from their Chinese platforms and all the products they're also selling in the West. And you can tell with, I've seen pages like this before, where it's very, again, vague and boilerplate, and this tells me that the technology is still very much in its infancy. But you can see that they've made an attempt to do that. And normally people wouldn't think that, oh wait, if I want to get exposed to AI, I want to buy Alibaba, really? Yeah, well, it's true. The CEO has spoken quite clearly that he thinks that AI is the future, and Alibaba will be focusing on this. And you can see here too that they're focusing primarily, if you just take a simple Google search, they're focusing primarily on creating voice assistants, leveraging their data mining ability, industrial design, intelligent automated manufacturing, and also robotics too, which I think is interesting. And there's a few of their products that you can tell that are still more proof of concept, but still there's something interesting here. And a lot of people just think like, oh wow, I thought Alibaba was where I got my cheap Chinese goods, or where I could get things that would normally be a little more expensive than Amazon, pretty much the Chinese Amazon competitor. Well, there's a lot more to it than just buying, widgets and plastic junk. Alibaba really is at the forefront of that, which you wouldn't know normally. Next up is Google, which I think most of you guys know what it is. There's the Google DeepMind, which they're using for machine learning automation on detecting content on YouTube. And also, too, I mean, you can tell they're doing things, for example, like forecasting earthquake aftershock with AI-assisted science. Well, I think what they're mainly trying to do is they're leveraging their data really, really hard. So I think in particular, they're really focusing on machine learning. But the point is, with Google AI, they're definitely at the forefront there too. It's a little scary, but if you want to get exposure to the cutting edge of AI, you're going to have to invest in Google. In the past, they used to talk about how Google had these plans for these fleets of automated cars, if you guys all remember that, where they were driverless and they would go anywhere. There were a few accidents, and so far we haven't heard from that technology in a while. I think everyone thinks that Tesla is at the forefront of this, but I think in the background, Google is definitely still working on AI. You just don't hear much about it. You'd have to go and do deep dives yourself. Next up is Amazon. And so mainly if you're trying to access investing in AI through Amazon, you mainly would be doing it through the machine learning services on AWS. And it seems for the most part that they're using machine learning just to optimize their own platform, if you read that. So obviously the focus of their machine learning, it's not even AI or proper automation really, but they're focusing primarily on machine learning for getting the most as they can out of their sales platform. Now the thing too is it's not quite just that, right? So if they developed a proper machine learning system, it can be applied to other companies, right? Anytime, if you think a company is necessarily being too limited, always remember that the first thing these companies often like to do is license their technology or their product in a B2B scenario. So what's interesting here is that Amazon's web services and their machine learning has been given to the Expedia Group, Tinder, Netflix, Pinterest, Yelp, the NFL, and you can see all the companies here, even Capital One. So this is a very quiet thing, but if you really want to go hard on machine learning, Amazon is a place to be. You can tell it's obviously not a huge focus of it, but if you buy Amazon, you will be exposed to it. Next up is Baidu. So I wasn't even aware that Baidu was into AI, and for those of you who don't know, Baidu is a Chinese company. You can see it's an internet search engine in China. Now what's interesting about Baidu is that I wasn't even aware they were in AI and machine learning and automation until I read it in an article. I actually found it on Quora. Now, I took the time to validate this for myself, but on Quora, a user pointed out that the quote-unquote Google of China, the Baidu CEO, for example, openly said that Baidu is an AI-first company. And if you want to talk about embracing the future, that's definitely embracing the future. Always remember, too, a lot of these companies, it's just talk, especially if the technology is in its infancy. But I like where the mentality is, especially if you want to invest in AI and automation, just in any way possible. You notice that, for example, it's talking about here in this article that Baidu has created a practical artificial intelligence tool, like smart speaker named Little Fish. It's like an Echo from Amazon. That's actually another example. You'll notice that a lot of these companies are stretching their legs with virtual or voice assistants. And I think, obviously, I had a tweet from Korenberg actually the other day that a lot of those are overhyped and the performance isn't necessarily still there, but you always have to remember that it's very easy to dismiss technology when it's in its early stage. But to be honest, if I see any progress, that usually means it'll get better. If I remember correctly, people laughed at Amazon in the first place, and people laughed at Google, and people laughed at Netflix, and all of them. Like, for every one of these now successful tech companies, even Tesla, I hate to mention it, there was a beginning when they would say, when the technology was much younger, like, why would anyone want to buy that? It's so impractical. Just remember, always look forward to these technologies. Now, the most I can find with this on Baidu is they have Baidu Research. And it's very vague. They have a few articles here and there. A lot of this seems to be focusing, again, very hard on neural networks, machine learning, machine translation. And you can see the articles, they're all, you notice they're categorized into neural language and speech, I should say. So a lot of these appear to be tied to, again, their voice-assisted platforms. But again, as long as they're gathering talent, and even if it's in its infancy stage, you can gain a pretty strong access to AI development and research and development by investing in Baidu, which most people don't even know, which I find interesting. Okay, next up is Robo. It's an ETF essentially for robotics and automation. You buy an ETF if you just want across-the-board access. Now, I noticed too that on here, it's only listing two holdings, iRobot Corporation and Cognex Corporation. I think there's more to it. It just says those are the top holdings. But that's one way of gaining access, and I'm sure in the future they would add more to get access to that. Now, Facebook, interestingly enough, is doing sort of the same thing, but Facebook is all over the place. I noticed they're doing a lot with they have leverage for data, and that can really help their machine learning processes. And I can't remember, but I know for a fact that Facebook is an AI, so I'm going to Google that right now, actually. Okay, yeah, so for example, you see things like Facebook is using AI to tell users to say hi to dead friends, mapping Africa. Mark Zuckerberg in particular seems to be obsessed with like mapping the world and expanding internet access and again reach into these non-developed areas using AI to map population density. That's similar to Google too. And of course too, there's always Facebook research similar to Baidu research. And it says here they're committed to machine intelligence and new technology, looking to solve AI. So clearly that's an admission that they don't know what's going on, or they haven't really reached proper AI yet, but obviously they're gathering talent. So if you want to get involved in that, I would check out the people they have and see the talent they've acquired, and check up an idea on their publication and seeing what they're doing. Next up is another robotics and intelligence ETF. Pretty similar. This one actually just appears to be holding Intuitive Surgical, which I assume is an automated surgical platform, if I had to guess. Now, another one that I think a lot of people will know is IBM. IBM is famous for Watson, where they gave a machine learning system access to a great deal of medical research and knowledge, and they made a semi-practical, medical assistant. It's called Watson. It leveraged a lot of medical studies, and it's able to diagnose problems and offer solutions. Now, again, I've mentioned this in a previous video. Martin Shkreli licensed the use of a Watson program for his pharmaceutical company, and from his account, he said it was not very useful. Just keep that in mind, but always remember too that these technologies get better in the future. Next up is applied materials. So applied materials, this is a different approach to AI, right? So obviously with AI, the processing power and the technological components involved in this will be, I would imagine, extraordinarily staggering. So when you invest in a company like Applied Materials, you're essentially betting like you would in a gold rush, right? There are two types of businesses in a gold rush scenario. There are miners who can do very well if they succeed and they find gold, but most people don't find gold. And then there are people who sell the shovels, right? So this is the famous example. And the old saying is that it's always safer to invest in the shovel seller than the miner, because then the person who sells shovels to the people who are mining during a gold rush looking for gold, they're able to sell to everyone, and they're able to sell regardless win or lose, where it's the miner that has to go out there and perform. So for example, you're seeing here that they process lithography, they sell all the necessary semiconductors and components, electron microscopes, et cetera, et cetera. So in this case, you're investing in the company that has the materials and produces the components necessary for an AI revolution. It's, again, you probably won't profit as much as if you were to pick the company that does succeed at AI, but this is also a bet attached to that sector, right? So this company will supply the sector overall, and that's why it's included in the AI portfolio. Next up is a Dutch company. I know many of you will appreciate that. And what's interesting about this too is it's another company that's focusing on producing photolithography systems and semiconductors. Again, this is another shovel company. And again, in all of these, I would look at their financials and production and talent. I would look at everything that has to do with this company individually. But again, this has broad exposure to the technical components necessary for AI. Broadcom, same as before. They make routers, among other things. Pretty much anything that has to do with technological infrastructure, Broadcom's in. So you'd have the same experience. Again, it's a shovel company when approaching AI. So next up is a company you never would expect, and that's actually John Deere, believe it or not. And when you think of John Deere, you think again of agricultural equipment and farming equipment, really. But what you don't know is that John Deere and Company paid $305 million, as it says in this article here, to acquire Blue River Technology, which is a creator of a crop spraying technology that relies on machine learning as a way to enter the AI agricultural market. So I give them credit. They probably, if I had to guess, if this works out well for them, they would be the ones creating a future where machines, intelligent machines, are harvesting all of our food and creating our food. And again, they're keeping up, at least from the production and agricultural side, when it comes to automation and artificial intelligence and machine learning. So this is a company you would miss normally. Again, John Deere, right now it's an agricultural company. You think of like older people, older farmers out in the Midwest on their tractors, where, well, believe it or not, John Deere has exposure to AI, automation, machine learning. Next up is Integris. This is another company that produces the necessary chemicals for microelectronics particularly, which is interesting because naturally AI systems, especially depending on how portable they are, they're going to need microelectronics. And so this is approaching AI from the shovel perspective, like I said before, and they're focusing on hardware. And so they have the specialization necessary to produce that. And so naturally, I think Integris would benefit from most technological booms. So what's interesting too is that Honeywell, you wouldn't think about it, this is the company that created the thermostat. Well, they're widely reported in the industry as providing the technology for warehouse automation, especially automated warehouse climate control and all the other infrastructural industrial systems for that. And so for any future supply network that's mostly automated, Honeywell is the one deploying the technology to automate those systems. And as far as I can tell, looking most into automating distribution and all the other infrastructure systems. iRobo shares in artificial intelligence. That's another ETF that's picking up artificial intelligence companies. I'm going to skip that one just because we've seen all the other ETFs in this portfolio before. Now, a really interesting company is Lam Research. And so Lam Research, they manufacture semiconductors. But the important thing is that they produce a unique kind of flash storage and other forms of memory that are necessary for the type of technologies we're seeing and we're talking about in this video. Lam Research also has a lot of exposure to AI. And it's definitely a company that most people I don't think are talking about. Now, Micron Technology is a Wall Street Bet's favorite, and you notice that they're known for producing DRAM for PCs and servers, and also flash memory. They're actually considered a cyclical, commodities company. So what's really weird about computer memory is that it seems to be, again, very cyclical. I don't pretend to understand Micron. The company never really interested me per se. It's a big favorite on Wall Street Bets. And I know from a fact that if they're producing, the memory and the computer technology for that, Micron naturally would be providing it. I mean, they're integral to computers. Microsoft, I don't need to say much more about that. I think they have a lot of research into AI, research and development. Most people know what's going on in that. Northrop Grumman, interestingly enough, would be the ones producing the self-driving or the self-flying planes and automated war machines and drones, robots. Northrop Grumman definitely would be the ones practically applying artificial technology, and you could argue that it's going to be the evil company of the future. But again, if you're interested in the pragmatic, robotics, automated platforms, Northrop Grumman would be the way to go. And actually, as I forgot to mention before, Google, I believe, bought Boston Dynamics, which were the people who made the first practical robotics platforms. In fact, you can see them walking in videos, and the technology really is impressive. Here's the video. You can see, I mean, it's really incredible. So if you're buying Google, you're investing in this company. I can imagine in the future these machines will be used as bodyguards. Like imagine if you're in a situation where it's a heated political climate and you're flanked by two of these robots that automatically push away anyone that gets too close to you. They don't even have to be armed. You can just make a 6-foot-tall robot and they'll defend anyone. I mean, the applications of these robotic platforms it's absolutely incredible. All right, next up is NVIDIA. So they're making obviously, everyone knows NVIDIA. They make the GPUs, all that. NVIDIA, again, that's a shovel company, and they'd be the ones producing the components and hardware for for AI exposure, if we're talking about investing in a portfolio. United Technologies Corporation, again, this is another one that's looking to just automate key systems in industrial scenarios, commercial scenarios, etc. So they would be the ones that would be supplying the components for a future house that's automated and intelligently run with the thermostats controlled, etc., etc. And also they're in a lot of avionics and aircraft components. So any machine or AI drones in the future, this company would be supplying the components. So this next company, which I won't try to pronounce, Xilinx or whatever, it's considered to be one of the top AI exposed companies. I've seen it written up about many times. And what's interesting too is that they produce FPGAs, which are considered integral for a lot of these, again, in-chip automated systems. So for example, I believe a Tesla car would rely heavily on the chips for its self-driving system. And that's not a true AI, but it's a form of automation, which you know what I'm getting at. And an FPGA is a field programmable gate array, and I'm sure that more technically savvy people will know about these. And if you want to get access to the specialty technology and the specialty hardware, the specialty chip, Xilinx, or I won't even try to say it, but this is the company you would buy. So what's interesting about Yext is this is actually the first true AI, AI dedicated company. And so I'm going to read directly from the description right here. EXinks provides a knowledge engine platform that lets businesses manage their digital knowledge in the cloud and sync it with over 100 services listed below. Digital knowledge is the structured information that a business wants to make publicly accessible. The company also makes search intelligent by helping to provide precise, accurate, and current answers to location-based queries that are conducted across the web in mobile applications and voice and artificial intelligence or AI engines, right? And so it has subscription services. This is the one where they're partnered with, you can look on their website, all kinds of these companies, and they're leveraging data and actually creating true, I won't say true, but they're creating actionable in the now AI services for these companies. And I would say in terms of practical applications when it comes to internet technology, this is a company that's the furthest along, and I'd be interested to see what they do now. And that's all of it. So I'm going to link this pie down in my description of this video, and I want to thank you for watching. If you want to invest in this portfolio, all you do is you click the pie and sign up for M1 Finance, and you'll be able to invest in this pie really as soon as you sign up. Now, it is an affiliate link, so for example, if you sign up with my link and you deposit $100, you get a free $10. I get a free $10 from M1 Finance, instant 10% gain. You help me out, you help the channel out, and that's how you get access to M1 Finance and start investing today. Now, there are a lot of companies listed here, and again, this is a very shotgun approach, but the idea here is that you want to capture all the progress related to AI as best as possible, knowing that no one here is really smart enough to know for sure which company will be where. And it's hard to gain access to everything that's going on with AI because, for example, Boston Dynamics, the robotics company, that was private for the longest time. So I want to thank you for watching this video, and I think my next up-and-coming videos might be about gene therapy and also a breakdown of my income on YouTube and how I make income in my life. So I look forward to that, to your comments, and also to you guys watching. That's all for now.